As the story develops and as information's released and people are able to talk on both sides, I feel like it's appropriate and the due diligence as a content creator to cover that as that does happen. And that continues here with Tim Kennedy. Now, a lot of you guys may have been caught up, may have not, so I'm going to try to give a TLDR. Tim Kennedy has been known to be involved with a lot of geopolitical and world events that are going along throughout the world, as he is an ambassador or some kind of involvement with an organization known as Save Our Allies, where they are involved with trying to be implemented in areas where they feel like they can supplement where places such as the State Department or Homeland Security or whoever else is not able to go in certain areas, and they can act more independently and freely to try and coordinate some kind of bridge there. Now, through that entire thing, a lot of people online have actually been talking about their criticism towards him and Save Our Allies, as it looks like they've been involved in the Israel and Palestine conflict, and people are saying that he was not actually doing any good, and the fact that he was actually going to a place that didn't need their help, and also not actually trying to help anybody that was in need on the Palestinian side as well, and only focusing on Israel. Obviously, Joe Rogan is a factor in this because he just went on the podcast with Joe Rogan, and we know that Joe Rogan does bring people on that are in points in their career or lives where they can come into crossroads and kind of bring light to certain situations as well. And you have Tim Kennedy on this podcast using this as a platform to give more light on certain situations that have occurred and, unfolded over in Israel and Palestine, which I think gives a lot more context from my previous video where he was just getting entire hate and not really coming out against it. But it looks like Tim Kennedy has doubled down against this, and he has some more to say from the podcast. We've taken some clips from that, so you don't have to watch the entire almost 3 hours of it. Also, this podcast with Joe Rogan has obviously led to other people digging up other dirt about Tim Kennedy, and much of that dirt across any video I've ever made about Tim Kennedy has always been about his clip of Second Amendment and how he thinks that there should be gun control, which people think is against everything he would ever go against. But overall, he does address that finally, but we're going to cover it here. Here are some clips from the podcast with Joe Rogan.
Department of State, they're an easy target to throw darts at sometimes, but they really do great for the American people. But there's always these gaps that, so fly out of, you're an American in Israel, right? You're a 75-year-old pastor that wants to go and walk where Jesus walked. Israel is just such a beautiful place where, there's 2.5 billion Christians in the world. There's 1.9 billion Muslims in the world. There's almost 20 million Jews in this world. And guess where their one place that they think to be the holies of holies are? That's right, in Israel, right? It is the place for the largest religions in the world to all celebrate. So you're a pastor and you want to go to the Jordan River because that's where Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist. You are a Muslim and you want to go to the Dome. You want to the Dome on the Rock. You want to go to the mosque that they're calling their reason for attacking Israel was because they thought it was going to be destroyed, which it never will be. It's protected by Israel. Whatever your motivation was, you get there, you're an American, and then this attack happens. American cancels your flight. United cancels your flight. Every single airline cancels your flight, and the only airline left is the Israeli airline. You're wherever you are in Israel, maybe you're on the Jordan River, maybe you're up north in the Haifa, maybe you're way down south in Eilat because you wanted to see the border of Egypt and this, you're the Gulf of Aqaba. It's the most beautiful water that connects to the Red Sea. And you're an American tourist. You don't have the wherewithal of knowing how to travel in the middle of a war. And now you're getting a thing from Department of State that says you have to go to Tel Aviv and connect with us and fill out this crisis intake form for us to be able to help you get out. From where you are as an American citizen to where you need to be to get out of this country where 1,400 people are being raped, murdered, burnt alive, tortured. There's people being kidnapped and hostages being taken. And you're just an American that's now stuck here, and every single airline has canceled your flight, no matter how many times you've booked it. We had this guy had booked 5 new flights, and every single one of those flights had been charged on his credit card. And so then his credit card is frozen because he's just booked 5 next day flights at, $3,000-$4,000 a piece. And, he's on heart medication, maybe he's on insulin, whatever the individual. We helped almost 400 people get out of Israel. But the Department of State, as amazing as there's these little gaps that somebody has to go and help them with that's comfortable moving in the middle of a war. And that's really where Save Our Allies comes in, is because we go and fill that gap. Like, how do I find this guy in this hotel that is too scared to leave, doesn't know how to get a bus, doesn't know how to get a taxi, doesn't know how to, his tourist information or his tourist guide is like, hey, bro, I'm out. I'm going to go down because my kibbutz just got murdered. I'm going to go help my family that, they're missing 3 of their family members. Of course, they're going to go and help. But now that guy is stuck, that his family's stuck, that pastor's stuck. So we had to go and find those people and move them to a place where they could get out of the country safely. And it was freaking hard.
Now, from this clip, a lot of people do agree with Tim Kennedy that they are at least trying to do something here and do something to make the situation better. People are looking at this like, Tim, what about all these other people that obviously don't have running water, are stuck in combat zones, have been bombed and things like that, where they're like, can you focus on any of them to try and get them out if you're saying you're going to bridge this gap here? However, Tim and Joe talk about how a lot of what's being taught and what is being influenced from other sides of the world or other places outside the country and outside the U.S. borders, and how that may be contributing to some of the hate that he is getting and many others as they're trying to do some good in the world, but this is what they have to say.
Similarly, in the propaganda vein, this pro-Hamas, we were texting before we came on here, like how fast things pivot. The rational understanding of a problem and how perverted it is from truth. Don't know how to fight this. This is a unique problem.
It's very unique and it's very strange. It's very strange to see massive protests on the streets that are yelling out in support of the people that did that on October 7th. And there was a professor recently that said he was elated when that happened.
Yeah.
And he was just suspended, which is crazy that it's only that. But the fact that there's people that are so fucking detached from reality, and they have this very strange leftist Marxist philosophy that is so untenable with the reality of the world, and yet they're teaching kids this. And then they're talking about this openly in public forums, openly in social media, openly in protests. It's fucking strange. It's so strange that people don't understand. It's so dangerous. And for young people that admire those people or that are being taught by those people and don't know any better, when that person's in a position of power and influence because they're discussing these things in classrooms or discussing these things on social media, I just don't understand it. I'm so confused. I never thought things would deteriorate this rapidly.
I'm disappointed, but I'm not confused. When you know the powers and the money that is being spent to try to destabilize America, when you look at our enemies, when you're looking at China, when you're looking at Russia, when you're looking at Iran, and the hundreds of millions of dollars they're spending in misinformation and disinformation, where they are perpetuating things that we 100% know to be not true, not factual, but they are very effectively. It's unnerving. Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister for Hitler, he had a playbook about how to spin truth and how to manipulate masses. How could you take what is a great, cool culture like the Germans were post-World War I, as they're trying to find their identity and they're trying to bounce back from a horrific war, and then by the mid-30s and late 30s, they're positioning to throw Jews into ghettos and then ultimately gas 6 million of them. How can that happen so fast? And you very quickly realize that it was an effective propaganda misinformation campaign where they were able to dehumanize and segregate certain aspects or ideas and then attach a name to those things and a face to those things and a people to those things. We saw it here during COVID, the unvaccinated.
Yeah.
And it happened fast. It happened in months. And the same way that police were demonized during the defund law enforcement and BLM movement. Now we know to be a complete hoax, a bunch of liars that manipulated truth and data and what really happened. And are there injustices? Absolutely. Are we a perfect nation? Totally not. Is law enforcement perfect? No, for sure. But by and large, the vast majority do want to do good. Like it says, protect and serve, and that's what they raise their hand to do. But they're being destroyed by this misinformation campaign. And Russia and China want it. You know, they want us to be fighting each other. They want pro-Palestinian protests. They want pro-Hamas protests. They want from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That is a call for genocide. They're calling for, so the river, the Jordan River, which is on the east side of all of Israel, the sea, the Mediterranean. In between those two things is where Israel lies, 7.4 million Jews. They want that to not exist. They want no Jews to be there. So every time that you hear from the river to the sea, it is a call for genocide or an expulsion of all Jews out of Israel. And that is the call of Hamas. And guess who's paying for that thing to be seen on Cornell and in Harvard and in that's right, Russia and China. They're being manipulated by a bunch of our enemies as they're trying to destabilize us in a region and here in the United States.
And it's a vulnerability that we have because of our freedom.
Yeah.
From this clip and watching this, I can tell you that most of us that are watching this video most likely agree that, like, yes, there are influences from outside the world that are going to have some kind of bearing on what happens in the U.S. However, from our little peephole, our little one tree in the forest from our phone or whatever that is, really makes it hard to decipher of where that line ends of, like, is this just propaganda being forced from some other entity such as China or Russia? And what is actually real hate, discontent, or people that do actually believe some of the ideology that's going here? And I don't want to just dumb down and say people are here just believing whatever they hear from some college professor, but it can be hard because that can come from a level of power being taught down to a lower level where that can have issues there. There's been stuff I've been taught in school that, especially college classes, where I'm like, I don't really believe in this. I understand what you're trying to teach me, but I am a human being that's an adult that can say, cool, that's what you believe. You're teaching me this ideology, but I don't have to abide by that or totally own that in my own ideology system. And this just sounds like the perfect psychological warfare as far as people being just misunderstood of what the stances are, who's good, who's bad, and all these things. And this just leads a lot of people not knowing where to go, which just allows chaos to continue unchecked, which is what a lot of people want to have happen. Now, getting to the last part, because of this podcast, the Joe Rogan, and this has led a lot of people on both sides of the fence looking to Tim Kennedy, looking to take their little shots at him. But this clip has resurfaced from the Lance Armstrong podcast, and where he did talk about gun control, and people were saying that people should not support Tim Kennedy throughout this.
Yeah, I think about it all the time.
Yeah.
And then we think about what the solution is. That's what I think about. When was the last time
you said gun control?
Yeah, I believe gun control is a massive solution.
Good.
I do not think that.
I didn't expect you to say that.
I don't think a 19-year-old kid should have access to an AR-15. I don't think, he should be able to buy a pistol. Fortunately, he can't. But if you can't buy a pistol, how can you buy a semi-automatic AR? That doesn't make sense to me.
Now, this clip for years has obviously been something that has been contentious because on my own videos, people have talked about this clip, but Tim never really seemed a need to address it, and I don't know why now is the time. I think maybe years ago, this would have been a better addressed topic than right now, and I have not seen him address it anywhere else. This is the first time, but he's taken to Instagram, and he's finally said some, of his full context, and says some of this was taken out of context.
So, man, I hate spending any time having to address anything negative. And I try as best I can to stay in the positive about all things. Even when I'm doing reviews of new products, if I don't like a product, I don't even review it. I'll film it and I'll be like, man, this isn't great. And but sometimes you have to address even the worst ankle biters. There's a bunch of people on the internet right now that have been circulating tiny little clips, a 10 to 15 second clip of me from 5-6 years ago on one podcast where I had used language specific to that audience, where I had said that gun control could be a great solution to active shooters. And that little tiny bit right there, taken out of context, what I had specifically said was any gun law is a form of gun control, and that there are good gun laws, and which I believe that there are. You know, if you are a multi-time felon, illegal immigrant that is using drugs, that has a restraining order for abusing your wife, you probably shouldn't buy a gun. And on a 4473, if you're going to fill that out, you should have to answer those questions truthfully, but it's self-incriminating when you choose to which questions you're going to answer. The idea that I am anti-2A is ludicrous. It is absolutely insane. As we are sitting in the SDR training center that has a gun store at the front, Noble Defender, in a place that is manufacturing suppressors. The entire industry that I work in, training and equipping Americans to be able to preserve and protect human life and to be able to provide for their families, is centered around the idea of freedom, about sovereignty. Everything that I espouse, the mission statement of my company is to be able to expand freedom. The final sentence is expand freedom. Right there is the Constitution. The fella holding the camera, his first day of work, he got a Constitution when he started working for us, as does every single person that works here. I love the Constitution. I love the Second Amendment. And one of my, Tim Schmidt, owns Delta Defense, USCCA. For some reason, they have also been bundled into these ideas of being anti-2A, which is also insane. When I say ludicrous, I'm saying there is not a logical, rational bit of cognitive thought that could make sense of me or USCCA or Delta Defense being anti-2A. Everything that we do is to support the Second Amendment. Everything that we espouse, everything that we preach to, everything that we train is about equipping Americans to be able to protect themselves, because we know that no help is coming. I've experienced it firsthand, and so has the reason behind U.S. Concealed Carry Association is to empower Americans to have more tools and more resources in the event of having to protect themselves or their family. So this is a time where all those that love freedom, that love sovereignty, that love America should be unifying and should not be intentionally dividing us. I'm not going to waste a breath talking about any specific person that has been saying this, but there have been many.
So this video is not to have you go one way or the other, for Tim, against Tim. I would like to present both sides as much as possible, both ideologies, to try and let you as the viewer be able to make your own consensus from this, what your thoughts are about Tim Kennedy and, you know, the military community that he obviously does represent to a degree, as he's been Special Forces, as a Green Beret, and obviously all these other multitude of things. I jokingly said he's Ken Barbie, but he's done so many things out there. And I'm not just looking to be the armchair quarterback in this situation, but the development of this situation really does happen down in the comments below. So if you guys do have thoughts about Tim Kennedy, this situation, what's going on in Palestine, all this Second Amendment stuff, and how it's all whirlwinding and coming together, please put that down below, because I think you guys do have valid points and conversations down there. But if you guys do like what I cover on this channel, make sure you guys always hit me up over on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, or down in the comments below. I love you guys. I'll see you next time.